Forget everything you learned in history class. The towering walls of Sakai Huaman, the endless blocks of Giza, the scattered ruins of Puma Punku, they weren't built by human hands. These stones tell a different story. Precision cuts that rival modern lasers, blocks so heavy they mock gravity itself, and alignments so perfect they point not to chance but to the stars. For centuries we've been told they were carved with bronze chisels and dragged on wooden sledges, but stand before them, run your hand across their flawless seams, and the official story begins to crumble. What if the truth is far bolder? What if these monuments are not relics of human ingenuity, but the fingerprints of alien technology, hidden in plain sight for thousands of years? Tonight we step into that possibility, into the silence of ancient quarries, into temples etched with forgotten symbols, into ruins that refuse to be explained. Join me as we explore the impossible stonework of the ancients and ask whether the answers we seek lie not in history books but among the stars. There are moments when the earth itself feels like it is speaking, not through words but through weight. Stones, silent yet immovable, carry a message that has outlasted every empire, every language, every name once etched into clay or papyrus. These stones are more than building blocks. They are puzzles carved into the very skin of the world. To stand before them is to be confronted not just with human history, but with the possibility that human history is incomplete. Consider first the fortress of Sakai Huaman in Peru. Rising above the city of Cusco, its walls curve across the hillside in sweeping arcs, each block a titan in its own right. Some weigh over 100 tons. They are not neat rectangles but irregular shapes, polygons with up to 12 angles, fitted together with such precision that no mortar was ever needed. Modern stonemasons, equipped with steel tools and diamond saws, marvel at the complexity of these joints. And yet, the Inca, or those who came before them, supposedly carved them with nothing more than bronze chisels and stone hammers. The paradox is plain. How do tools softer than the rock itself leave behind seams so flawless that even today a thin razor blade cannot slip between? The question grows deeper when we trace the edges of the stones. They do not simply meet, they interlock, weaving into one another like pieces of an immense stone tapestry. Earthquakes that have flattened cities left these walls standing, their joints absorbing shock like the flex of a living body. Engineers who study them admit that their resilience is no accident. The design is deliberate, as though crafted with an advanced understanding of seismic forces. Did the builders simply stumble upon this mastery through trial and error, or were they working with a body of knowledge or a kind of technology that has been erased from memory? From Peru we turn to Egypt, where the desert holds secrets even more imposing. The Great Pyramid of Giza, largest of all, once gleamed with polished casing stones, now mostly gone. But what remains still defies comprehension. Each of its four sides aligns almost exactly with the cardinal points, deviating by only fractions of a degree. Surveyors armed with GPS marvel at its precision, and yet this was achieved over 4,000 years ago, long before compasses, telescopes, or satellites. At its base, blocks weighing between 2 and 15 tons are stacked with uncanny uniformity, while the internal passages reveal tolerances of less than a millimetre. And beneath Egypt's sands lie other enigmas. The Osirian at Abydos, for instance, features granite blocks so massive that archaeologists often describe it as out of time. Unlike the surrounding temple of Seti I, built with conventional tools and decoration, the Osirian's megalithic blocks are rough, unadorned, and colossal. Some scholars even suggest it is older than the dynasties of Egypt itself, a remnant of a civilization that preceded the pharaohs. Why then would a temple built in the New Kingdom contain a foundation more archaic and technologically perplexing than what came after? The stones themselves seem to insist on a story that diverges from the textbooks. The mystery is not confined to the Andes or the Nile. Across the Mediterranean, the ruins of Malta's megalithic temples rise in spirals and ovals, constructed from blocks weighing 20 to 50 tons, arranged with astronomical alignments that track solstices and equinoxes. In Britain, Stonehenge's sarsen stones stand as though frozen mid-ritual, each weighing up to 30 tons, hauled from quarries miles away. On remote Easter Island, the Moai statues stare across the Pacific, carved from volcanic tuff and then somehow transported across rugged terrain, some weighing more than 80 tons. Everywhere we look, the same questions repeat. How, with the simplest of tools, did early societies manage feats that test even modern machinery? Why the obsession with monumentality, with lifting the unliftable, shaping the unshapeable, aligning with stars invisible to the naked eye? Science attempts answers, but often leaves gaps. Experimental archaeology has shown that small groups of workers can indeed move heavy stones using ropes, sledges, and lubricated tracks. But scaling such methods up to match the greatest monuments quickly strains credibility. To transport a block weighing 800 tons, as seen at Baalbek in Lebanon, would require ramps larger than the structures themselves and a workforce numbering in the tens of thousands, coordinated with a precision rivaling modern engineering projects. Yet the archaeological record is strangely silent about such immense infrastructure. Geology deepens the puzzle. Many of these monuments are carved from rocks harder than the tools available. Granite, common in Egyptian monuments, ranks around 6.5 on the Mohs hardness scale, while copper or bronze tools barely scratch a 3. Diorite, used in some Inca and Egyptian carvings, is even harder. To shape such stone with softer metals would require not only endless labour, but techniques beyond what is recorded. And yet the surfaces of these blocks often show smoothness, symmetry, and regularity that suggests something closer to machining than hammering. Could there be explanations we have not yet considered? Some propose lost technologies, sonic methods, abrasive compounds, or even forgotten alloys. Others suggest the stones themselves may hold evidence of heating, as if softened or melted before shaping. Mainstream science resists these theories, but the anomalies remain, and so the mystery of ancient stonework is not simply one of construction, but of meaning. Why were such methods chosen at all? If survival or shelter were the goal, smaller stones would have sufficed. If ritual grandeur was the aim, decoration could have substituted for scale. Instead, the ancients chose the hardest, heaviest, most immovable stones and shaped them with a perfection that challenges our understanding. To walk among these ruins is to feel time fold in upon itself. The stones are ancient, yet they feel futuristic. They are silent, yet they speak of a dialogue we have not yet deciphered. Were they crafted by human ingenuity alone, or are they the residue of something greater, a technology once shared, perhaps by visitors from beyond, and since lost? This is where our journey begins, in the awe of the impossible, in the quiet defiance of stone against time. For these monuments are not simply relics, they are questions carved into the earth itself, questions that have survived longer than empires, longer than languages, longer than memory. And the first step to answering them is to admit, humbly, that what we think we know about history may only be a fragment. Bronze against granite, copper against diorite. It is a contest that should end in failure every time, and yet the ruins we have inherited, pyramids, temples, and fortresses, seem to insist otherwise. The paradox lies in the tools history credits to ancient builders. According to mainstream archaeology, they carved, drilled, and polished some of the hardest stones on Earth with implements that were, by the laws of physics, too soft to succeed. The unfinished obelisk at Aswan is perhaps the clearest demonstration of this puzzle. Cut directly into the granite bedrock, this monument would have stood at 42 meters tall, weighing over 1,000 tons, the largest stone ever attempted in ancient Egypt. Along its sides, one can see deep channels that look strikingly uniform, as though made by enormous drills or saws. Archaeologists explain them as the product of dolerite pounding stones, hard rocks used to chip away at granite. But here lies the contradiction. The marks are not random or rough. They are smooth, parallel, and consistent. Engineers visiting the site often remark that they resemble the signatures of mechanical cutting, not handheld bashing. How could pounding stones alone leave behind traces that evoke industrial methods? A similar enigma appears at Ollantaytambo in Peru, where massive blocks of pink granite rise in terraces that dominate the sacred valley. On their surfaces, boreholes spiral into the rock, some perfectly circular, as if drilled by rotary tools. Modern stonemasons recognize the telltale signs of mechanical drilling: regular striations, symmetry, and depth far greater than a copper chisel could produce. Yet the Inca, who inherited much of the site, are not known to have possessed iron, let alone steel. To fully grasp the paradox, one must understand the Mohs scale of hardness. This scientific scale ranks materials from 1, soft talc, to 10, diamond. Copper and bronze fall around 3. Granite and basalt, the very stones used in monuments, fall between 6 and 7. In practical terms, this means that softer metals should not be able to cut, drill, or polish harder stones. To imagine an ancient worker chiseling granite with copper is like imagining a butter knife slicing through steel. Even if possible, the effort would have required unimaginable time and thousands of destroyed tools. Yet the results we see are not crude scratches, but precision blocks with millimetre-perfect tolerances. Some argue that the builders may have used abrasives, quartz sand for instance, poured along with copper chisels to grind the stone. While this method can explain certain surface wear, it does not account for the smooth interiors of drilled holes or the laser-straight edges of polygonal blocks in South America. Experimental archaeology has attempted to replicate such cuts using hand tools, but the results are slow, inconsistent, and far from the industrial precision evident in sites like Puma Punku or the Valley Temple of Giza. In Egypt's Serapeum of Saqqara, another mystery sharpens. Hidden beneath the desert are massive granite sarcophagi, each weighing up to 70 tons, carved with precision into rectangular forms, their interiors polished to a reflective sheen. The corners are sharp, the surface is smooth, the symmetry remarkable. Engineers who have studied them point out that even with modern diamond-coated tools, replicating such work would be challenging. Were these boxes ceremonial tombs, or remnants of a technology we no longer recognize? To complicate matters further, many of these sites display evidence of drilling that seems beyond Bronze Age capabilities. British engineer Sir William Flinders Petrie, one of Egyptology's pioneers, documented drill cores taken from granite at Giza that showed spiral grooves that implied drill speeds and pressures far beyond what hand tools could achieve. Petrie's meticulous notes remain part of Egyptological record, though mainstream scholarship often downplays their implications. For the grooves suggest not slow abrasion, but something closer to powered drilling. The contradiction deepens when we consider the sheer volume of material. The Great Pyramid alone contains an estimated 2.3 million blocks of stone. Even if the softer limestone blocks were relatively manageable, the granite used in its inner chambers, quarried from Aswan, hundreds of kilometers away, presented an entirely different challenge. How were these stones not only transported but shaped with such accuracy using tools incapable of cutting them? Alternative theories abound. Some propose lost human technologies, alloys harder than iron that have not survived, or techniques of sonic vibration that fractured stone without cutting. Others suggest heating methods that weakened the crystalline structure of granite, making it workable. But the alien hypothesis goes further. If these cuts and drills resemble modern machinery, perhaps that is because they were made with machinery, not ours, but someone else's. Skeptics counter that no alien tools have been found, No fragments of advanced machines lie buried beside the ruins. But perhaps that is the point. If such tools were not of this world, they may never have been left behind. Or perhaps they were ephemeral, designed in ways that did not survive millennia. The absence of evidence does not erase the paradox, it only sharpens it. What is undeniable is that the tools attributed to the ancients are, by material science, too weak for the task. The evidence rests in the stones themselves, perfect holes drilled into granite, surfaces smooth as glass, blocks so precise they interlock without mortar. Each is a silent witness, defying the narrative we are told. The paradox is the beginning of the mystery. For if the tools of record cannot account for the monuments of record, then something is missing, either a lost chapter of human knowledge or an intervention from beyond. The chisels crumble against the stone, but the monuments still stand, daring us to ask, who held the tools that history has forgotten? High on the windswept altiplano of Bolivia, more than 3,800 meters above sea level, lies a site that has baffled archaeologists and engineers alike. Puma Punku, part of the larger Tiwanaku complex. Unlike Giza, where size stuns, or Sakai Huaman, where interlocking polygons amaze, Puma Punku captivates with a different kind of riddle, the riddle of precision. To walk among its scattered blocks is to wander through a ruin that feels less like an ancient temple and more like the remnants of a dismantled factory. The most famous stones here are the H blocks, carved from andesite, a volcanic rock nearly as hard as granite. Each block weighs several tons, yet they are cut with perfect right angles, flat surfaces, and repeating geometric details. Place them side by side and they interlock like pieces of a child's building set, except these toys weigh thousands of kilograms. Some blocks have channels cut into them with exact depth and uniformity, while others bear holes drilled so evenly that their edges feel machined rather than carved. Archaeologists date the Tiwanaku culture to around 500–1000 CE, long before iron tools, let alone machinery, were available in the region. And yet the blocks stand as though produced by advanced workshops, standardized and modular, designed to fit together with uncanny consistency. The precision lingers like a riddle. Was it only hammers and chisels, or something far stranger? What do you feel when you look at these stones? Modern engineers who have examined the H blocks often note that their cuts resemble those made by machine tools, saws, lathes, or drills that maintain uniform pressure and precision. The regularity of depth, the straightness of lines, and the perfect 90-degree corners are difficult to reproduce even with steel instruments. Some researchers suggest the blocks were not carved individually, but mass-produced according to a template, a striking concept when considered against the backdrop of the high Andes 1,500 years ago. The placement of Puma Punku is itself mysterious. The site sits over 12,000 feet above sea level, in a region where agriculture is difficult and oxygen thin. Why here, of all places, would people haul massive stones and erect monumental structures? Local legends may hold a clue. Andean mythology tells of the creator god Viracocha, who emerged from Lake Titicaca to shape humanity and command the stones into place. According to oral tradition, Puma Punku was built in a single night by divine power. To mainstream archaeology, this is myth. To alternative historians, it may be memory. A recollection of advanced beings or technologies that appeared godlike to ancient eyes. Evidence at the site complicates conventional explanations. Some blocks appear to have been quarried miles away, yet their surfaces are smooth as if ground by machines. Others contain drilled holes with near-identical diameters, arranged in sequences too precise for handheld chisels. The site also shows signs of catastrophic destruction. Blocks scattered, toppled, some fractured as though by immense force. Earthquakes are common in the Andes, but some alternative researchers argue that the scattering looks more like the aftermath of an explosion or sudden upheaval. If so, Puma Punku may not have simply collapsed with time, but suffered a violent end that erased whatever function it once served. Comparisons are often made to modular architecture. The interlocking H-blocks seem designed to assemble into walls or platforms with both stability and speed, much like prefabricated parts in modern construction. Imagine a culture that not only shaped stones but standardized them, producing components for a greater structure. Could Puma Punku have been a hub, not of ritual, but of technology? Some suggest water channels carved into the stones may have been part of a hydraulic system, perhaps even connected to energy production. These ideas remain speculative, yet they speak to the sense of design that permeates the site. Mainstream archaeologists attribute Puma Punku to the Tiwanaku, a sophisticated pre-Inca civilization known for agriculture, trade, and ritual practices. Yet the leap from terraced farming to industrial-style stonework strains credulity. The Tiwanaku left pottery, textiles, and carvings, but no record of advanced tools. Why then do the stones of Puma Punku look so unlike the rest of their material culture? Were they inheritors, building atop ruins older than their own history? Or does Puma Punku represent a chapter of technology they possessed briefly and mysteriously, then lost? The alien hypothesis offers a bolder answer. If visitors from beyond once aided humanity, Puma Punku might be their signature site, not grand in scale, but unmistakable in style. The precision here feels almost unnecessary if the goal was only ceremonial. But if the stones were designed as components, as part of a larger mechanism or complex, then their perfection makes sense. Imagine machines that cut stone with laser-like accuracy, lifting blocks with ease, assembling them like puzzle pieces. To the Tiwanaku people, such machines would have seemed miraculous. To us, they appear as anomalies, evidence of something that doesn't fit within human history as we know it. Skeptics, of course, resist. They argue the precision is overstated, that erosion and fracturing exaggerate what once were simpler cuts. They suggest hammerstones, patience, and ingenuity could explain the grooves and angles. But even if this is true, the sheer consistency across multiple blocks remains a stumbling point. If hammerstones could achieve this, why do we not see the same level of refinement in other Tiwanaku stonework, or in the wider Andes? Why only here, at Puma Punku, do the stones whisper of industry? To stand among the H-blocks is to sense something incomplete. The ruins lie toppled, scattered, as if abandoned mid-project. Walkways end abruptly, walls rise a few feet then stop, blocks rest unused. It feels less like a finished temple and more like a construction site suddenly frozen. Was Puma Punku ever completed? Or was it interrupted by catastrophe, by departure, by the withdrawal of whatever knowledge had made it possible? This is why Puma Punku is often called the smoking gun of ancient mysteries. It is not the largest ruin, but the most precise, the most jarring in its defiance of explanation. Its stones do not simply impress, they provoke. They hint at design that belongs not to the Bronze Age, but to a world where machines shaped stone as effortlessly as clay. And if Puma Punku was not merely a ceremonial centre, but a place of technology, human or otherwise, then it forces us to reconsider the story of civilization itself. For if such precision once existed on a plateau in Bolivia, what else might have existed mere and vanished without a trace? In the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon, where mountains press against fertile plains, stands one of the greatest enigmas of the ancient world, Baalbek. Today the site is famous for its Roman ruins, the Grand Temple of Jupiter with columns nearly 20 meters tall, the Temple of Bacchus with its intricate carvings, and the Temple of Venus with its circular elegance. Yet beneath and behind these visible wonders lies something even more astonishing. Stones so large, so immovable, that they defy every explanation archaeology has attempted. At the base of the complex rests the trilithon, 3 rectangular blocks each weighing more than 800 tons. To put that into perspective, each block is heavier than a fully loaded Boeing 747. Yet they sit aligned in a single row, fitted so precisely that their seams are almost invisible. Even more bewildering, they rest several meters above ground level, elevated on a platform of smaller stones. How did builders not only quarry such blocks, but lift and place them with such accuracy? The puzzle does not end there. In a nearby quarry lies the stone of the pregnant woman, estimated at over 1,000 tons, still attached to bedrock. In 2014, excavations uncovered an even larger block in the same quarry, weighing an estimated 1,650 tons. The heaviest stone ever cut by human hands and yet never moved. The mere existence of these blocks challenges the imagination. To this day, even with modern cranes, lifting such a stone intact would be nearly impossible without risking collapse. Mainstream archaeology attributes Baalbek's massive stones to Roman engineering, claiming they built the platform as a foundation for their temples. The Romans were master builders, no doubt, and their use of concrete arches and aqueducts reshaped the ancient world. But here the logic falters. Why would the Romans, who typically favoured smaller modular construction methods, suddenly choose to move blocks weighing hundreds of tons? Their other temples across the empire, from Rome to Palmyra, do not rely on such megaliths. And why would they risk the difficulty when smaller stones would have sufficed? Unless, of course, the platform was already there when they arrived, an inheritance from an earlier, unknown civilization. Legends surrounding Balbeck support this possibility. Arab traditions claim the site was built by giants under the orders of Nimrod, a king mentioned in biblical texts. Some local myths suggest Cain, son of Adam, built it after his exile. Others describe it as a landing place for the gods, a fortress of Baal, where beings from the sky descended. These stories, though wrapped in myth, echo a memory. Baalbek was no ordinary city. Engineering studies highlight the logistical nightmare of the trilithon. Moving an 800-ton stone across uneven terrain would require not only immense manpower, but an infrastructure of ramps, sledges, and levers on a scale larger than the monument itself. Experiments with smaller stones have shown the difficulty even with hundreds of workers. To transport and lift the trilithon would demand resources and techniques far beyond what we attribute to the ancients of the Levant. Some scholars speculate the stones were carved and placed in situ, never transported. Yet even so, shaping and aligning them with such precision remains unexplained. Alternative theories suggest lost technologies, perhaps rolling the stones on wooden logs lubricated with oil, or sliding them on sledges over wet clay. But wood in such quantities would have been scarce, and the risk of breakage immense. Even today, modern engineers acknowledge that moving a 1,000-ton block intact requires advanced cranes, hydraulic supports, and meticulously planned foundations. Could ancient builders really have achieved the same with rope and manpower? For those who look beyond conventional explanations, Baalbek seems less like a human construction site and more like the footprint of something otherworldly. The stones could have been placed with the aid of machines capable of manipulating gravity, or devices that used resonance or energy fields to neutralize weight. To the people of the time, such technology would have appeared divine, the work of gods or giants. To us, it suggests the presence of an intelligence that understood and harnessed forces far beyond human reach. Even the alignment of Baalbek hints at greater meaning. The platform's orientation has been linked to celestial observations, aligning with certain stars in ancient epochs. Some researchers argue the site may have functioned as more than a temple, perhaps as an energy node, a place of astronomical significance, or even a landing platform. While speculative, these ideas emerge naturally from the scale and uniqueness of the construction. Skeptics argue that awe distorts judgment. They remind us that human ingenuity, when amplified by time and determination, can achieve remarkable feats. They point to the Romans' known ability to organize massive workforces and their penchant for grandeur. But even among skeptics, Balbeck remains an anomaly. No conclusive evidence shows precisely how the trilithon was placed. The stones stand, but the methods are missing, lost in the silence of history. The power of Balbeck lies not only in its mass, but in its message. These stones were never meant to be ignored. They dominate the landscape, immovable even by the passage of millennia, daring us to explain them. If they were human achievement, then they reveal a chapter of technology and ambition we scarcely understand. If they were alien in origin, then they are a signature, a monument left by visitors who wish their presence to be undeniable yet inscrutable. And so, Balbeck becomes a mirror. To some, it reflects human brilliance stretched to its limits. To others, it reflects contact with the beyond. For everyone who stands before the trilithon, it reflects awe. Awe at stones that should not move, yet rest in perfect alignment as though placed by invisible hands. From here, our journey leads back to Egypt, where the mystery shifts from weight to knowledge. For if Baalbek challenges the limits of strength, the Great Pyramid challenges the limits of precision and cosmic understanding. In the burning sands of Giza, 3 pyramids rise against the horizon, but one towers above all, the Great Pyramid of Khufu. For more than 4,500 years, it has stood as the largest stone structure ever built, and perhaps the most mysterious. Its sheer scale is staggering. Originally 146 meters tall, with a base covering 13 acres, and built from more than 2.3 million stone blocks, some weighing 15 tons or more. Yet its scale is not what makes it truly impossible. It is its geometry, precision, and hidden knowledge that confound even the sharpest modern minds. The 4 sides of the Great Pyramid align with the cardinal directions more accurately than any modern building until the age of satellites. Its deviation from true north is just 3 arc minutes, about 0.05 degrees, a feat that should have been impossible for a Bronze Age civilization without compasses. To put that in perspective, if a side of the pyramid extended 1 kilometre, its error from true north would be less than 1 metre. Surveyors marvel that the Egyptians achieved this with only sighting rods and simple tools, yet no experiments have shown how such accuracy could be achieved consistently on this scale. The dimensions themselves are even more enigmatic. The perimeter of the pyramid, divided by its height, yields a value remarkably close to 2p, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. Was this coincidence, or evidence that the builders understood advanced geometry and the mathematical constant p long before it was formally described in Greece? Others have noted that the pyramid encodes the golden ratio, suggesting that the structure was designed as a mathematical model as much as a tomb. Inside, the mysteries deepen. The king's chamber, constructed from massive granite blocks transported from Aswan more than 800 kilometers away, resonates at specific frequencies. Acoustic engineers who have studied the chamber note that sound waves amplify within it, producing harmonic vibrations. Some speculate that this was deliberate, that the pyramid functioned as a resonant structure, perhaps even as an energy device harnessing Earth's natural frequencies. The precision of the chamber supports this. The granite blocks are cut to tolerances finer than 0.01 inch, a level of craftsmanship rarely matched until modern machine tools. 2 narrow shafts extend from the king's chamber at angles upward toward the stars. Around 2500 BCE, they aligned with Orion's belt and Sirius, stars deeply connected with Egyptian mythology. Was this alignment symbolic? A pathway for the soul of the pharaoh to ascend? Or was it a technical feature, a stellar calibration built into the pyramid's geometry? The shaft's precision implies more than symbolic artistry. They were constructed with intent, as though the pyramid itself were a bridge between earth and sky. The base of the pyramid is equally astounding. Each side measures about 230 meters, and the difference in length between the longest and shortest side is less than 20 centimeters, less than 0.1% variation. Modern engineers note that even with contemporary surveying equipment, Constructing such a massive base with this degree of accuracy would be daunting. Yet the Egyptians did it, supposedly with ropes, plumb lines, and sighting poles. Beneath the pyramid, further enigmas await. Ground-penetrating radar surveys have revealed hidden voids deep within, including a massive chamber above the Grand Gallery discovered in 2017. Its purpose remains unknown. Was it structural, designed to relieve pressure, or is it a secret chamber, perhaps still sealed, awaiting discovery? The Egyptians left no inscriptions within the pyramid itself to explain its function. Unlike other tombs, it contains no hieroglyphs, no murals, no clear markers of ritual. The silence of its walls is as deliberate as its geometry. Mainstream Egyptology holds that the Great Pyramid was a tomb for Pharaoh Khufu, yet no body has ever been found inside. The granite sarcophagus in the king's chamber is empty, its lid missing. The absence of remains fuels speculation. Was it ever meant to hold a body at all? Or was its purpose something else entirely? Perhaps symbolic? Perhaps technological? Perhaps something we cannot yet imagine? Alternative theories abound. Some propose that the pyramid was an astronomical observatory, a calendar encoded in stone. Others suggest it was a power plant designed to resonate with Earth's natural vibrations and generate energy, supported by traces of chemical residue found in internal passages. Still others believe it was a beacon, signaling to beings beyond our world. Whatever its purpose, its geometry suggests design beyond human necessity. No tomb requires this level of precision. Even the materials chosen raise questions. The pyramid's outer casing, now mostly gone, was made of polished Tura limestone, highly reflective under the sun. When complete, the pyramid would have gleamed like a mirror, a brilliant white mountain visible for miles, possibly even glowing under moonlight. Some have suggested it could have been seen from space, a deliberate marker for anyone watching from above. The inner core, meanwhile, used granite rich in quartz, a material known to vibrate when compressed, much like the crystals in modern electronics. Was this simply practical material use, or a deliberate choice to harness resonance? Skeptics remind us that the Egyptians were master builders, capable of extraordinary feats of labor and organization. They argue that trial, error, and sheer manpower could explain the pyramid's construction. Yet even among skeptics, the pyramid's geometry remains a marvel. The combination of size, precision, alignment, and mathematical encoding has no parallel in ancient architecture. It is as if the builders were not only constructing a monument, but also leaving behind a riddle, a message hidden in mathematics, astronomy, and stone. The Great Pyramid stands then not just as a tomb, but as a question carved into the desert. If built by humans alone, it reveals a chapter of knowledge far greater than history records. If influenced by beings beyond, it is a message of contact, preserved for millennia. Either way, it resists dismissal. It humbles, it astonishes, and it endures. From the stones of Giza, where geometry and mystery converge, our path now leads to a different possibility. Perhaps these impossibilities were not the work of aliens at all, but of human civilizations long forgotten. Cultures erased by catastrophe, yet leaving behind fragments of their genius in stone. When we marvel at Sakai Huaman, Balbeck, or the Great Pyramid, one explanation often rises in defense of human ingenuity. Perhaps these works are not alien at all, but the fingerprints of lost civilizations, cultures wiped away by time, cataclysm, and forgetfulness. This theory offers a middle path. It does not deny human genius, but it suggests our story is far older, deeper, and more fractured than textbooks allow. If true, it reshapes history no less dramatically than the alien hypothesis. The best-known legend of a vanished world is Atlantis, described by Plato in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias. Around 360 BCE, he wrote of an island civilization beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the Strait of Gibraltar, powerful and advanced, that fell in a single night of earthquakes and floods. Scholars often dismiss the tale as allegory, a moral story about hubris. Yet the memory of a great flood appears across cultures. The Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh describes a deluge that destroyed humanity, echoed centuries later in the biblical flood of Noah. In India's Satapatha Brahmana, Manu is warned by a great fish of rising waters. In Mesoamerican lore, the gods destroyed earlier worlds with floods, fire, and darkness. Could these parallel myths preserve the memory of a true catastrophe, an event so vast it erased civilizations and scattered survivors to rebuild anew? Modern science provides a striking context. At the end of the last ice age, around 12,900 years ago, the world entered the Younger Dryas, a sudden return to glacial conditions. Researchers have proposed that comet fragments struck North America, triggering massive floods as ice sheets melted. Sea levels rose by more than 100 meters, drowning coastlines where early settlements might have thrived. If any advanced society had built great cities along those shores, their ruins now lie beneath oceans, invisible until sonar and underwater archaeology reveal them. Here is where Graham Hancock's research becomes vital. In his landmark work, Fingerprints of the Gods, and later in Magicians of the Gods, Hancock argues that an advanced civilization thrived before this cataclysm. According to his hypothesis, survivors of that forgotten age, sometimes called the magicians, carried fragments of their knowledge into the reborn world, seeding the rise of Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Mesoamerica. For Hancock, sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey provide proof. Dated to nearly 12,000 years ago, it features massive carved pillars with animal symbols built by hunter-gatherers long before agriculture or cities were thought possible. He frames it as a smoking gun, a monument of complexity erected immediately after the cataclysm, perhaps by survivors who remembered the world before. If Atlantis or some other lost world truly existed, what kind of technology might it have wielded? Hancock suggests they may have mastered astronomy, navigation, and geometry to a degree equal or superior to later societies. Others speculate about stone-shaping techniques now vanished, methods that used vibration, resonance, or even heat to cut and move blocks. Myths across cultures speak of flying machines, such as the Vimanas in Indian texts, or of cities illuminated without fire. Were these metaphors or distorted memories of real technologies preserved in myth? Here lies the bridge between lost civilizations and the alien hypothesis. If ancient humans possessed such knowledge, how did they acquire it? Did they develop it independently, achieving a peak of genius before being erased by flood and fire? Or were they guided, taught by visitors whose presence was later remembered as gods? Hancock himself leans toward a human-centered explanation, but even his work leaves the door open. If these teachers were remembered as bearded gods descending from the sky, could they have been more than human? Physical evidence remains scarce, yet anomalies persist. The Antikythera mechanism, a 2,000-year-old Greek device discovered in a shipwreck, demonstrates that complex geared machinery existed centuries before such technology was thought possible. If such devices survived into the classical world, could more advanced tools have existed in earlier epochs, erased by catastrophe? At Puma Punku, with its machine-like H-blocks, we may be seeing not alien artifacts directly, but the echoes of a technology once known and lost, either human invention or imitation of something taught. Skeptics counter that myths exaggerate, coincidences mislead, and that human creativity needs no Atlantis to explain itself. They argue that agriculture, writing, and architecture emerged independently in multiple regions because humans everywhere faced similar needs. Yet even mainstream archaeology acknowledges that gaps remain. Why did agriculture, monumental architecture, and complex social systems appear so suddenly after the Younger Dryas? Why do myths from every continent echo a flood, a fall, and a rebirth? Why does Göbekli Tepe stand millennia before it should? Perhaps the most humbling possibility is that our story is cyclical. Civilizations rise, reach peaks of knowledge, then fall into silence, leaving only fragments for the next age to rediscover. If so, we are not the pinnacle of progress, but merely the latest attempt in a sequence stretching back tens of thousands of years. The stones then may not only be monuments, but survivors. The hardest fragments of lost worlds that once flourished, now all that remains after fire, ice and water, erased the rest. They whisper of a time when knowledge ran deeper, of teachers forgotten, of technologies buried with the floods. And if those fragments are real, if humanity has risen and fallen before, then we must ask, what was their secret? What tools did they wield that left no trace but impossible stonework? Was it human invention erased by disaster? Or was it knowledge given by beings from beyond, now hidden beneath myth? From here, the trail leads towards stranger forces still. If the lost possessed hidden knowledge, perhaps it wasn't metal or fire they mastered, but vibration itself. The power of sound to lift mountains and move stone. Sound is invisible. It cannot be held in the hand or seen with the eye, yet its power is undeniable. A song can move the heart, a vibration can shatter glass, and the right frequency can shake the walls of a building. But what if, in some forgotten age, sound did far more than entertain or inspire? What if it was harnessed to move stone itself? Legends from across the world preserve fragments of this idea. In Tibet, stories tell of monks using drums, gongs and horns to raise massive stones, chanting as the earth itself seemed to release its grip. Swedish engineer Henry Kjellson, writing in the 20th century, recorded accounts of explorers who claimed to witness Tibetan monks directing sound toward boulders, causing them to lift into the air and glide into place. Mainstream science treats these tales with skepticism, yet they echo ancient themes. That vibration, properly tuned, could overcome gravity. Even in Egypt, echoes of this memory persist. Some versions of the myth of Thoth describe the god of wisdom as speaking creation into being, his words shaping matter. The Memphite theology, inscribed on the Shabaka stone, declares that the god Ptah conceived the world in his heart and brought it forth with his tongue. Here, creation itself is an act of sound. In the Bible, Jericho's walls collapse at the blast of trumpets. In the Vedic texts of India, Shabda, primordial sound, is the essence of reality. These myths may not be literal, but they carry a suggestion. Sound was once considered a force as fundamental as fire or stone. Modern science offers glimpses of how such myths might reflect reality. Physicists today can levitate small objects using acoustic levitation, a process that employs carefully tuned sound waves to create pockets of pressure that suspend objects in mid-air. In laboratories, drops of water, beads of polystyrene, even tiny living organisms have been floated by sound. While these demonstrations are small, they reveal that vibration can indeed counter gravity, not through brute strength, but through resonance. Could ancient builders have discovered, or been taught, a way to scale this up? The walls of Sakai Huaman and Ollantaytambo in Peru bear stones weighing up to 100 tons, fitted so perfectly that they resist earthquakes. Moving such blocks with ropes and manpower alone seems implausible. But what if sound, amplified through instruments, chants or devices, reduced their effective weight? To the people of the Andes, the process would have seemed miraculous, a gift of the gods. To us it would appear as technology hidden behind ritual. Evidence in architecture hints at an awareness of acoustics. The king's chamber of the Great Pyramid resonates at specific frequencies, amplifying sound in ways that feel almost designed. At Chavin de Huántar in Peru, an ancient temple complex, subterranean galleries produce powerful acoustic effects, turning conch shell trumpets into instruments that could shake the body and disorient the mind. Even at Stonehenge, researchers have found that the circle's layout creates unusual echoes, amplifying sound like a natural theatre. Were these places ceremonial? Certainly. But were they also laboratories where sound and vibration were studied, refined, and perhaps harnessed? The alien hypothesis pushes this further. If visitors from beyond once aided humanity, they may have brought tools that manipulated resonance at will. Imagine devices projecting sound waves so powerful and precise that they could lift stones, soften rock, or fuse joints. To ancient eyes, such tools would be divine staffs, rods of power, or thunderous voices. Legends of gods wielding weapons of sound, Indra's thunderbolt, the Norse Gjallarhorn, or the Sumerian Enki's word of command, may preserve memories of such devices. Skeptics argue there is no physical evidence for sonic levitation. No instruments, no machines, no blueprints survive. But this absence is not surprising. Organic materials like wood, hide, or bronze would not last thousands of years in most environments. If the tools were not of this earth, they may never have been left behind. What remains are the myths, the acoustics of ancient sites, and the stones themselves, stubbornly heavy, yet moved in ways we cannot fully explain. There is also the question of why sound would be chosen. To modern minds, machines of steel and engines of power seem more practical, but sound has advantages. It requires no fuel in the modern sense, only air and resonance. It is subtle, leaving no tool marks. It can act at a distance, shaping matter without contact. And most importantly, it aligns with the worldview of many ancient cultures, in which the cosmos itself was born from vibration, from the hum of creation. Imagine a construction site 3,000 years ago, not filled with slaves hauling ropes, but with rows of horns, drums, and chanting voices. Imagine a block rising slowly, shuddering in rhythm with the sound, gliding into position with effortless grace. To the workers, it would feel like a holy act. To the builders, it would be practical engineering cloaked in ritual. To us, it would look like magic. Whether human or alien, whether myth or memory, the possibility that sound once moved stone invites us to see ancient ruins differently. They are not only monuments of weight, but monuments of silence. Silence that once may have been filled with resonance so powerful it could shake the earth. And if sound could lift stones, what else might it have done? Could it cut rock, shape matter, or unlock energy hidden within the earth? The myths hint, the ruins whisper, but the answers remain veiled. What we do know is this: the silence of ancient sites feels almost deliberate, as though waiting for us to rediscover the forgotten music that once built worlds. From this possibility of levitation through resonance, the trail leads naturally to another anomaly. Not just stones lifted, but stones seemingly melted, reshaped as though touched by fire, not of this earth. Stone, by its nature, resists change. Wind and water may erode it over centuries, ice may crack it in winter, and time may weather its face. But to melt stone requires something different. Intense heat, often greater than that of a volcano. Granite, basalt, and diorite, the very stones used in many megalithic sites, require temperatures above 1,000 tylons to 5,200 degrees Celsius to soften, and far higher to liquefy. No Bronze Age fire, no simple wood pyre could reach such extremes. Yet across the world we find ruins that seem to bear the scars of heat, fire, and even fusion, as if ancient builders possessed methods for reshaping stone that go beyond anything history records. The most striking examples come from the Vitrified forts of Scotland. Scattered across the highlands are dozens of Iron Age fortresses where the stone walls appear partially melted, their rocks fused together like glass. Archaeologists debate how this occurred. Some propose that defenders set massive timber frames ablaze, their flames heating the walls until stone fused. But experiments with wood fires suggest that while partial vitrification is possible, the scale and consistency seen in these forts would require temperatures and conditions difficult to sustain with ancient methods. Were these fortresses destroyed by invaders wielding fire? Or do they represent experiments with an unknown technology, one capable of generating controlled heat sufficient to alter geology? Similar anomalies appear in the Andes. At Sakai Huaman and Ollantaytambo, some of the stones show surfaces that look warped or softened, as though clay before hardening. Corners curve unnaturally, edges flow into one another, and in some cases the fit between blocks appears not carved, but moulded. Visitors often describe the impression that the stones were poured into place while still malleable, then cooled into hardness. Could the builders have discovered a method of heating or chemically treating stone to make it pliable? No clear evidence of furnaces or kilns large enough to handle blocks of this size has been found. The effect, however, is undeniable. In Egypt, too, hints of heat remain. The granite boxes of the Serapeum of Saqqara are polished to a mirror finish inside and out, their surfaces so smooth that modern machinists compare them to precision milling. Some researchers suggest the polishing effect could result from intense heating and rapid cooling, a process akin to vitrification. Elsewhere, faint discolorations on temple walls suggest exposure to high heat, far beyond what open fires could generate. The question then is not whether heat can affect stone, it clearly can, but whether ancient builders possessed the means to wield such fire deliberately. To reach melting temperatures for granite or basalt, one would require something like a blast furnace, or perhaps high-energy plasma. Such technologies do not appear in the conventional record of early civilizations, and yet myths once again offer tantalizing hints. In Mesoamerican lore, the gods used fire from the sky to reshape the earth. In Indian texts, the Agnyastra, a divine weapon, unleashed fire hotter than the sun, incinerating cities and melting stone. Even in the Bible, Sodom and Gomorrah are destroyed by fire and brimstone from heaven, a phrase some interpret as meteoric impact or catastrophic heat from above. Are these allegories of natural disasters, or memories of a force capable of melting stone at will? Modern science does provide analogies. Plasma torches, for example, can slice through rock by superheating it to tens of thousands of degrees Celsius. Lasers can cut stone with precision using focused energy beams. These are tools of our own era, yet they demonstrate that reshaping stone with directed heat is entirely possible, if one has the technology. Could ancient builders, or those who guided them, have possessed something similar? Even stranger are sites where melted stone seems to coexist with architectural precision. At Puma Punku, some stones bear surfaces that suggest they were softened, while others are cut with such straight edges they resemble machined parts. If both methods appear at one site, heating and cutting, could they represent different stages of the same technological process? Perhaps the stones were first softened, then shaped with precision, producing joins so seamless they still defy explanation. Skeptics caution against overinterpretation. They argue that natural weathering, earthquakes, and chemical erosion can create the appearance of melting. Basalt and andesite, when fractured, can mimic the look of softened edges. Fires fueled by timber may indeed have vitrified parts of forts. These are reasonable points, but they do not erase the broader puzzle. Why do so many sites across continents display the same anomalies, the same suggestion of heat applied in ways that seem deliberate? If ancient builders used heat to shape stone, the motive is also puzzling. Why choose methods so extreme when carving with chisels, however slow, would suffice? Unless the purpose was not simply construction, but demonstration, to leave behind monuments not only of scale, but of method, testifying to a knowledge of forces beyond ordinary means. The alien hypothesis enters here with unsettling clarity. If beings with advanced technology intervened, they might have employed energy tools resembling plasma cutters, sonic heaters, or directed beams, tools that would leave behind melted edges, fused walls, and polished surfaces. To humans witnessing such acts, it would appear indistinguishable from divine fire. Legends of gods wielding lightning, fire from heaven, or celestial weapons could be literal memories of such tools in action. One cannot help but recall the Mohenjo-Daro anomaly in India, where archaeologists found evidence of intense heat in parts of the ancient city. Melted stone and pottery fused together as though from a sudden blast. Some fringe theorists have compared it to nuclear effects, though mainstream archaeology attributes it to fires. Yet the imagery echoes myths of fiery destruction, of weapons that rained heat upon the earth. Taken together, these scattered clues form a haunting mosaic. Vitrified forts, warped Andean blocks, polished Egyptian granite, and melted ruins suggest that at some point, somewhere, someone had the ability to wield fire not as chaos, but as craft. Whether human, alien, or both, the ruins themselves preserve the scars of that mastery. The paradox remains unresolved. If ancient hands achieved it, they must have possessed techniques utterly lost to us. If others brought the fire, they left no tools, only the echoes of their presence. But the stones do not lie. They bear the marks of heat no campfire could generate, no chisel could explain. They are, in their silence, testimonies of fire harnessed by forgotten means. From here, the journey shifts. If heat and sound could both move and shape stone, what other clues remain in the monuments themselves? The answer lies not just in their form, but in their symbols, in the glyphs and carvings that whisper of gods descending, of stars mirrored on earth, and of visitors who may have left their messages inscribed in stone. Walk into the crypts of the Temple of Hathor at Dendera in Egypt, and you will find one of the most controversial carvings in the ancient world. On its walls are images resembling elongated bulbs, complete with filaments and cords, supported by figures who appear to revere them. Egyptologists describe them as stylized lotus flowers emerging from the primordial waters. But to alternative researchers, they look uncannily like electrical lamps. The resemblance is startling. Bulbous shapes, serpent-like filaments, even what could be interpreted as a power source beneath. Was this simply symbolic art, or does it represent technology witnessed, remembered, and mythologized? The Dendera relief is not alone. At Abydos, within the Temple of Seti I, a panel of hieroglyphs appears to depict modern machines. A helicopter, a submarine, even what some interpret as a futuristic aircraft. Scholars explain these as palimpsests, carvings overwritten over time, creating accidental shapes. Yet to many, the coincidence is difficult to dismiss. If mere chance, why do the resulting images so closely resemble vehicles of our own age? Were these symbols of power and imagination, or memories of machines the ancients once saw? Travel to Mesoamerica, and the story repeats. The sarcophagus lid of King Pakal at Palenque shows the ruler reclining in a posture that looks strangely like an astronaut at the controls of a craft. His hands grip what appears to be levers, his feet press upon pedals. Flames or exhaust seem to emerge from beneath. Archaeologists call it a symbolic journey into the underworld. Yet the resemblance to a modern pilot is so striking that Erich von Däniken and others hailed it as the astronaut in stone. Again, we are left with a puzzle, whether Maya recording cosmic myths or describing an actual encounter. Elsewhere, entire mythologies speak of gods descending from the sky, often bearing tools, knowledge, or symbols of power. The Anunnaki of Mesopotamia are described as beings who came from the heavens to shape humanity and establish kingship. In the Andes, the god Viracocha emerged from Lake Titicaca, tall and radiant, teaching architecture, agriculture, and astronomy before vanishing. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, arrived from across the sea, offering wisdom and promising to return. In Polynesia, legends of the Tupuna recall ancestors who came from the stars. Different names, different stories, yet a repeating motif, knowledge descending from above. One of the most compelling threads connecting these myths is their obsession with the heavens. Ancient structures worldwide are aligned not randomly, but with precision to stars and celestial events. The Great Pyramid of Giza's shafts point toward Orion's belt and Sirius, central to Egyptian cosmology. The layout of Teotihuacan in Mexico mirrors Orion's belt, while Angkor Wat in Cambodia maps the constellation Draco. The Nazca lines in Peru stretch across the desert in massive geoglyphs, some resembling animals, others resembling runways or astronomical markers. Why did so many cultures across continents focus their greatest monuments on the stars? Consider the Dogon people of Mali. Long before modern astronomy, their oral traditions described Sirius not as a single star, but as a system with a hidden companion, Sirius B, invisible to the naked eye and only confirmed by telescopes in the 19th century. They also spoke of beings called the Nommo, who descended from the sky and taught them knowledge of the cosmos. How could such detailed astronomical information exist without instruments? Mainstream scholars suggest cultural contamination, contact with modern sources before ethnographers recorded the traditions. Yet the timing and consistency of the Dogon stories make this explanation unsatisfying to many. Carvings across cultures amplify the enigma. In Egypt, reliefs depict what some call aircraft-like forms. In India, texts such as the Mahabharata and Vaimanika Shastra describe Vimanas, flying chariots powered by unknown energies capable of traversing the skies and even space. In Central America, glyphs show serpents descending from the sky, sometimes with human figures emerging. In the American Southwest, Hopi rock art includes star maps and figures that resemble beings in suits remembered as the Kachinas, who came from the heavens. Skeptics argue that we project modern images onto ancient art, that what we see as spacecraft or bulbs are simply symbols of fertility, ritual, or myth. And there is truth to this caution. Ancient art is layered with metaphor, not blueprints. But the persistence of similar forms across continents, coupled with the star alignments of monuments, suggests more than coincidence. Why do so many cultures describe gods not just as spirits, but as teachers, engineers, or navigators of the sky? Another puzzle lies in the accuracy of ancient star maps. At sites from Nabta Playa in the Egyptian desert to Chaco Canyon in New Mexico, alignments mark solstices, equinoxes, and even long-term celestial cycles. Some researchers argue that certain monuments encode precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis, which takes 26,000 years to complete. To detect precession requires long-term astronomical observation. Could early societies, supposedly primitive, have tracked such vast spans of time unaided? Or did they inherit this knowledge from predecessors or visitors who already possessed it? The convergence of myth, glyph, and monument paints a picture that is difficult to ignore. Across the globe, cultures remembered beings from the sky. They carved images that resemble machines. They aligned temples to the stars as if mapping a homeland not on Earth, but in the heavens. If these are coincidences, they are among the most elaborate in history. If they are memories, then they hint at contact with a knowledge older than civilization itself. The stones speak in silence, but the glyphs give them voice. Together they suggest a story in which humans were not alone in shaping their early path. Whether gods, teachers, or travelers from beyond, the influence of the sky is written in both stone and myth. And if we listen carefully, the message seems consistent: look upward. The answers are not buried in the ground, but scattered across the stars. Yet if glyphs and myths hint at visitors, then the stones themselves, massive, impossible, and enduring, may be the clearest testimony, for they are not only carved with symbols, but built in ways that defy human capacity, pointing to a common pattern that spans the globe. Across oceans and continents, the same pattern repeats: massive stones, impossible cuts, alignments with stars, and myths of gods descending from the heavens. Each culture, from the Pacific to the Mediterranean, from the Andes to the jungles of Asia, carries a piece of the puzzle. When the fragments are placed side by side, a question emerges. Was there a global blueprint, a hidden design guiding humanity across thousands of years and thousands of miles? Take Easter Island, where the Moai statues, some over 10 meters tall and weighing more than 80 tons, stare toward the horizon with solemn faces. Mainstream accounts say they were carved from volcanic tuff and dragged with ropes. Yet the logistical challenge remains staggering. Oral traditions tell of the statues walking into place, powered by mana, a spiritual force. Some researchers suggest walking was a metaphor for advanced transport methods, perhaps mechanical, perhaps something else entirely. What matters is that the Moai are not random. They are placed in specific alignments, their backs to the sea, their gaze inland, as if participating in a network of sacred geography. Thousands of kilometers away in Micronesia, the site of Nan Madol rises from tidal flats. Built from massive basalt columns weighing up to 50 tons each, the city covers an area of nearly 200 acres. It is called the Venice of the Pacific, a city of canals and artificial islets. But basalt columns do not float. Moving them across water and stacking them into walls several meters high remains a logistical mystery. Local legends attribute its creation to twin sorcerers who used magic to command the stones. Magic or memory of a forgotten technology. Shift to Southeast Asia, and we find Angkor Wat, the largest religious monument in the world. Its towers and galleries are not only breathtaking, but cosmically aligned. Studies show the temple mirrors the constellation Draco as it appeared in the 11th century. This suggests that its builders encoded astronomical knowledge into the very layout of their city. Similarly, in Central America, Teotihuacan's 3 Great Pyramids mirror Orion's belt, their arrangement echoing the stars above. In both cases, human settlements were designed as terrestrial star maps, a marriage of heaven and earth that defies coincidence. In the Andes, the story deepens. Machu Picchu, perched high on a ridge, is not only a fortress, but a calendar, with stone pillars aligned to solstices and equinoxes. At Tiwanaku, the gateway of the sun is carved with astronomical markers that may encode the cycles of Venus. Again, the same motif. Stone monuments built not only for ritual, but for observation, orientation, and perhaps communication with the cosmos. Even in prehistoric Europe, alignments abound. Stonehenge marks solstices with uncanny precision. Nearby, lesser-known sites like Karnak in France feature thousands of standing stones stretched across kilometers, their arrangements still unexplained. Were they calendars, observatories, or energy grids? Whatever their purpose, they resonate with the same intention as sites half a world away, to connect the earthbound with the celestial. What ties all of this together is not only alignment, but repetition of impossibility. From Polynesia to the Andes, cultures used megaliths weighing dozens to hundreds of tons. From Cambodia to Mexico, cities mirror constellations. From Britain to Egypt, monuments align with solstices. How did cultures separated by oceans and millennia converge on the same techniques, the same obsessions, the same improbable achievements? Mainstream scholars invoke cultural parallelism. Humans everywhere looked up, tracked the sun and stars, and built in stone for permanence. But this explanation struggles to account for the level of precision and the scale of labor required. Aligning a temple casually to the sunrise is one thing. Aligning entire cities to constellations, with tolerances measured in arc minutes, is something else entirely. For alternative researchers, the repetition suggests a shared influence. Perhaps survivors of a lost Ice Age civilization spread knowledge across the globe, as Graham Hancock argues, teaching astronomy and architecture to emerging cultures. Or perhaps the influence came not from Earth at all, but from visitors who sought to imprint a common message. The monuments, then, are not isolated achievements, but nodes in a planetary grid, a vast design meant to link humanity with the heavens. One provocative idea is that these sites form part of an energy network. Researchers have noted that many lie along so-called ley lines, geometric alignments that crisscross the Earth. Giza, Stonehenge, Machu Picchu, and Easter Island all appear on or near these lines. Could the placement of megaliths have been deliberate, marking nodes of a planetary system designed to harness or balance Earth's energy? The idea remains speculative, but it echoes myths of dragon lines in China, song lines in Australia, and spirit roads in the Andes, all suggesting that ancient cultures saw the landscape as charged with invisible currents. Even more intriguing is the sense of unfinished design. At Puma Punku, stones lie scattered, as if construction was abandoned mid-project. At Balbeck, the largest blocks remain in the quarry, never moved. At Stonehenge, stones from Wales were transported hundreds of kilometres, only for the monument to remain incomplete. Were these projects interrupted by catastrophe, or were they parts of a greater design that was never fully realised? The alien hypothesis adds another layer. If visitors guided early humanity, perhaps they sought to leave a global signature, a message visible not only on Earth but from above. Cities aligned to constellations, monuments gleaming under the sun, colossal stones defying gravity, all could serve as signals to anyone watching from the sky. The blueprint, then, is both terrestrial and celestial, bridging Earth with the stars. Skeptics point out that without direct evidence of alien tools, these ideas remain conjecture. And yet, even skeptics admit the coincidence problem. Why do so many isolated cultures build in the same improbable ways? Why align their greatest monuments not to the practical, but to the celestial? Why repeat the same themes across oceans and centuries? The answer may never be clear, but what cannot be denied is the pattern itself. The monuments are not random. They echo one another across distance and time, as if chapters of a single book scattered across continents. A blueprint hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to connect the pieces. And if such a design truly exists, then our history is not local, but global. Our civilizations are not separate, but strands of a web woven long ago, perhaps by human hands guided by forgotten teachers, or by something beyond. From this vision of a global pattern, our journey must turn to those who resist such speculation. For every mystery that invites wonder, there are skeptics who insist on simpler answers, grounding the extraordinary in the ordinary. Their voices form the counterpoint, reminding us that the debate is as much about interpretation as about evidence. Every mystery casts two shadows, one of awe and one of doubt. For every whisper of alien influence, there are voices insisting on human genius alone. Archaeologists and engineers point to ramps, sledges, ropes, and relentless labour as sufficient explanations. They remind us that ancient people were not primitive, but ingenious, capable of feats we underestimate because we have lost touch with their methods. Take the pyramids. Mainstream Egyptology argues they were built with vast ramps, layers of workers hauling blocks upward step by step. Experimental archaeologists have shown that with wooden sledges, lubricated sand, and clever coordination, even heavy stones can be moved. Not easily, but not impossibly. With enough time and manpower, the impossible becomes merely arduous. At Balbeck, skeptics suggest the trilithon stones were not raised into place, but carved in situ, shaped directly within the foundation itself. At Puma Punku, they point to hammerstones, chisels, and patient labour. Each groove and notch the product of persistence, not machinery. In Peru, they argue that molten-looking stonework might be explained by polishing and clever fitting, not heat or plasma. Cultural parallels, too, find rational explanations. Civilizations across the globe look to the sky because the sky was universal. Alignments to solstices and equinoxes served practical agricultural needs. Massive stones inspired reverence, proving power and permanence. In this view, myths of gods descending are allegories, symbolic ways of expressing the awe of natural forces, not literal encounters with beings from beyond. Science lends weight to skepticism. No alien tools have been found. No extraterrestrial artifacts rest in museums. The geological record does not reveal spaceships or star-borne machines, only stone shaped by human hands. To demand aliens, skeptics argue, is to underestimate our ancestors, to rob them of their brilliance. And yet the questions remain. Ramps to build the pyramids would have required lengths greater than the pyramids themselves. Hammerstones may explain some marks at Puma Punku, but what of the razor-straight angles? The drilled holes too precise for hand tools? Cultural parallels may explain alignments to the sun, but what of alignments to distant stars, invisible without telescopes? Skeptics offer answers, but gaps endure. Perhaps both perspectives are incomplete. Perhaps ancient builders were indeed ingenious, yet guided or inspired by something more. Perhaps their ingenuity was the vessel, but the spark of knowledge came from beyond. The debate between skeptics and believers is less a clash of evidence than of interpretation. The stones are silent, impartial. They do not announce whether they were carved by human hands or alien machines. They simply stand, enduring, inviting us to wonder. And in this tension between human brilliance and alien possibility lies the true power of the mystery, for it keeps us searching, keeps us questioning, keeps us gazing at the stones and the stars alike. From the skeptics' voices, we return to the hypothesis itself. If the alien explanation persists despite criticism, it is because it has endured through time, through culture, through imagination. To understand why, we must trace the history of this idea, the ancient alien theory itself, from its earliest whispers to its place in modern thought. The idea that beings from beyond the Earth shaped human history is not a product of television alone. It is a thread woven through centuries of speculation, resurfacing again and again, as if the stones themselves were urging us not to forget. In the 19th century, before the word UFO had ever been spoken, writers puzzled over the mysteries of antiquity. Charles Fort collected strange accounts of unexplained phenomena. Lights in the sky, rains of stones, ancient anomalies, and suggested that humanity's history might be tangled with forces beyond comprehension. Early occultists whispered of lost worlds and star-born teachers. Even before archaeology matured as a science, the suspicion was there. We might not be alone. By the mid-20th century, the notion took clearer form. The space age had arrived, and rockets leapt skyward, echoing myths of fiery chariots. In 1968, Erich von Däniken published Chariots of the Gods, arguing that many of the world's monuments, from the Nazca lines to the pyramids, bore the fingerprints of extraterrestrials. His bold claims ignited fascination and controversy, launching a cultural movement that endures to this day. Critics dismissed him as sensationalist, but readers could not turn away. For once voiced, the idea resonated with something deep, the sense that the impossible stones we see might be the evidence we crave. Others followed. Zecharia Sitchin interpreted Mesopotamian texts, proposing that the Anunnaki were visitors from another world who engineered humanity itself. Carl Sagan, though cautious, admitted the possibility of ancient contact could not be ruled out entirely, though extraordinary claims demanded extraordinary proof. Popular culture amplified the message. From pulp magazines to ancient aliens on television, the idea of visitors from the stars became both entertainment and speculation. But the hypothesis is older than all these voices. Myths themselves preserve it. From the Hopi to the Maya, from the Egyptians to the Dogon, tales of gods descending from the heavens echo as if in chorus. The alien hypothesis is not simply modern projection, but perhaps the reinterpretation of very ancient memories, myths re-examined through the lens of technology. Why does the idea endure? Partly because the evidence resists closure. For every skeptic's explanation, another anomaly arises. For every claim of coincidence, another pattern emerges. The stones, the myths, the alignments. None are conclusive, but together they form a web too intricate to ignore, and perhaps the idea endures because it answers a longing within us. To believe we were visited is to believe we are part of a greater cosmos, that our story began not in isolation but in dialogue, that we are students, not orphans, of the universe. Still, to imagine visitors is not enough. We must ask the deeper question: if they came, why? Why would beings capable of crossing the stars concern themselves with our fragile beginnings? What purpose could move them to cut stone, teach knowledge, or shape civilizations? If we accept even as a thought experiment the possibility that beings from beyond the Earth once walked among us, one question towers above all others. Why? Why would entities capable of traversing light years concern themselves with fragile tribes on a young planet? Why would they carve stone, teach agriculture, or leave behind monuments that still challenge us today? To probe this question is to step into the deepest currents of myth, motive, and mystery. The myths themselves provide the first clues. In Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki are said to have descended from the heavens and fashioned humanity from clay mixed with the essence of the gods. The story implies purpose. Humans were created as workers, perhaps to labour in fields or mines. If true, this paints the aliens as masters, using their technology to engineer a servant species. The stones of Mesopotamian ziggurats, rising tier by tier toward the sky, may not only honour these beings, but embody submission to them. But in Andean lore, the tone is different. The god Viracocha emerges from Lake Titicaca after a cataclysm, teaching agriculture, engineering, and writing. His role is not one of enslavement, but of salvation, guiding survivors back to order. Similarly, in Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl is remembered as a benevolent figure, a teacher who introduced mathematics and astronomy, then departed across the sea with a promise to return. Were these visitors different factions with different motives? Or does memory itself shape them? Harsh masters in some traditions, gentle mentors in others. The Indian epics add another layer. In the Mahabharata and Ramayana, gods and heroes wield vimanas, flying chariots armed with weapons of fire and sound. These stories mix war and wisdom, beings who share knowledge yet also bring destruction. If based in truth, such narratives suggest alien involvement was not purely altruistic. Perhaps Earth was a theatre of conflict, a frontier where advanced groups contended and humans became pawns, students, or even experiments. One possibility is experimentation. From a scientific perspective, Earth is rich, a habitable world teeming with life, diverse in resources, stable in orbit. For an advanced species, such a planet would be an irresistible laboratory. Humanity could have been observed, nudged, and shaped as part of a long-term study. Genetic manipulation, as suggested in Sumerian myths, may have been part of this. If so, then our very existence could be the result of intervention, not an accident of evolution alone, but a deliberate design. Another possibility is stewardship. Some traditions portray the gods as guardians charged with guiding young worlds. If extraterrestrial civilizations operate on timescales of millennia, seeding intelligence may be their way of cultivating the universe. In this reading, humans are not slaves or experiments, but seedlings, tended by older gardeners. The great stone monuments, aligned with the stars, may have been intended as markers to remind us of our origin or as beacons for future return. Yet a darker view lingers. Could Earth have been valued not for us, but for its resources? The gold-rich mines of southern Africa, referenced in both geology and Sumerian myth, raise questions. Ancient texts describe the Anunnaki as needing gold, perhaps to stabilize their own atmosphere. If true, humans may have been engineered as miners, their civilizations structured to support extraction. The great megalithic sites would then be not gifts, but infrastructure. quarries, energy nodes, or even launch platforms. And still another motive may be memory and legacy. Civilizations that master interstellar travel may seek immortality not just biologically, but culturally. By teaching humans architecture, astronomy, and myth, they inscribe their presence into our history. The pyramids of Giza, the temples of Tiahuanaco, the glyphs of Palenque, these may be less about us than about them, enduring monuments to ensure that even if they vanished, their story would echo. Modern parallels sharpen the question. When European explorers reached the New World, they brought tools, animals, and knowledge unimaginable to the local populations. Sometimes they came as conquerors, sometimes as missionaries, sometimes as scientists. Their motives were mixed: curiosity, greed, faith, empire. To those they encountered, Europeans appeared as gods, taller, armed with thunderous weapons, arriving on floating temples of wood. Could ancient alien encounters have been similar? Not one motive, but many. Exploitation, teaching, domination, curiosity, and even compassion, all tangled together. Skeptics argue that such speculation projects human motives onto hypothetical beings. Why assume aliens would mine gold, teach farming, or seek worship? Yet myth after myth frames them in human terms: rulers, teachers, destroyers, saviors. Perhaps this is inevitable. Human cultures could only understand visitors through familiar archetypes. A starship becomes a chariot. A power tool becomes a divine weapon. Genetic manipulation becomes shaping clay. Memory distorts, but the essence remains. Someone came, and they had reasons. The most haunting possibility is that the motives were not singular, but cyclical. Visitors may have come in waves, some guiding, others exploiting, some uplifting, others indifferent. Each left traces: myths, monuments, and memories. Over millennia, the narratives merged, producing gods both benevolent and wrathful, creators and destroyers, mentors and masters. The question is not only why they came, but why they left. Were we abandoned to grow alone, like children after lessons? Were we forgotten, a failed experiment left to its own devices? Or are they still here, watching unseen, waiting for us to reach a threshold of readiness before contact resumes? The stones offer no clear answers, yet their scale and strangeness suggest intent beyond human need. No simple tomb or fortress requires such precision, such alignment, such effort. If aliens helped, they must have had a reason, one that mattered enough to leave legacies still standing after thousands of years. And so, the mystery of motive becomes the deepest enigma of all. For in the silence of the ruins, we hear two whispers, one of guardianship and one of control. Which was it? Perhaps both. Perhaps the truth lies not in choosing one motive, but in accepting that we were part of a larger story, one whose authors we have forgotten, but whose script is still etched in stone. From the question of why, we turn to the question of where. If beings from beyond once visited, their traces may not be limited to myths and monuments. Perhaps more evidence still lies hidden, beneath jungle, beneath sea, beneath ice, waiting for rediscovery. The earth is not silent. Beneath the canopy of jungles, beneath the weight of oceans, beneath the frozen deserts of ice, something stirs, not in motion, but in memory. For in recent decades, new technologies have begun to peel back the veil, revealing that what we thought was wilderness often hides the footprints of forgotten worlds. In the Amazon, LiDAR scans have pierced the green shroud, exposing entire networks of roads, plazas, and platforms. The Upano Valley of Ecuador revealed geometric settlements that rival the layout of early Mesopotamian cities. To the naked eye, it was only forest. To the laser's gaze, it was civilization, buried, erased, and now seen again. What else lies hidden beneath the jungles of South America, still waiting? Were some of these settlements connected to the same stoneworking knowledge that raised Puma Punku and Sakai Huaman? Off the coast of Japan lies Yonaguni, an underwater terrace of massive steps and platforms. Some call it natural formation, others insist it is the drowned skeleton of a megalithic complex. Its right angles, pillars, and sharp edges suggest design, yet the ocean keeps its secret. If it was once a city, then it belongs to an age when sea levels were far lower, perhaps before the cataclysms of the younger Dryas swallowed coastlines whole. Antarctica too hums with speculation. Beneath miles of ice, radar reveals anomalies, mountain-like structures, subglacial lakes, formations that do not match the language of geology alone. Whispers speak of pyramids under the ice, of lost archives entombed in the cold. Science offers caution, but the allure remains. If a civilization once thrived there, its ruins would be preserved, frozen in time, awaiting discovery. Each revelation forces us to reconsider the scale of the past. The known sites, Giza, Baalbek, Angkor, Teotihuacan, may only be the visible peaks of a vast submerged mountain of history. What we see is fragment, not whole. What we know is surface, not depth. The true story of humanity, and perhaps of its visitors, may still lie buried. If alien technology once touched our world, it may yet be hidden in these unexplored places. Energy devices fossilized beneath stone. Star maps carved in chambers no one has entered. Tools of resonance or fire preserved where catastrophe entombed them. Or perhaps not objects at all, but patterns. Networks of monuments aligned across continents, waiting for us to connect the dots. Skeptics will say these are fantasies, illusions born of our longing for mystery. But even skeptics cannot deny the discoveries. Cities under jungle, structures under sea, voids within the pyramids. Each decade reveals more. The past does not shrink, it grows, unfolding like a hidden manuscript rediscovered page by page. And so we wait, at the edge of revelation. What new site will emerge tomorrow? What buried city? What drowned temple? What frozen vault? The mystery is not finished. The book of the earth has not yet been read, and as new discoveries rise, one truth becomes clear. The stones are not done speaking. They whisper of hands we do not understand, of builders whose motives remain hidden, of a history not yet fully told. And in that silence, we hear the invitation once more, to listen, to wonder, to walk among the ruins not as owners of the past, but as students of something greater. From the promise of hidden ruins, we turn now to the stones we already know. The ones that stand in silence yet speak without words, enduring beyond civilizations, guardians of a question that has no end. The night is still. The moon drifts above silent ruins, and the stones bathed in pale light seem almost alive. They do not move, they do not speak, yet they endure. And in their endurance, they tell a story without language, a story of weight that defies gravity, of precision that mocks crude tools, of endurance that shames our fleeting empires. From Sakai Huaman to Giza, from Baalbek to Puma Punku, they rise as guardians of questions we cannot silence. Each block is a sentence, each wall is a chapter, each monument a book written not in ink but in granite. To read them is to feel history pressing down upon us, demanding humility. They speak of power, not the power of kings or armies, but of something older, greater, hidden. Whether it was the genius of lost civilizations or the guidance of beings from beyond, the stones preserve that power still. Their silence is not emptiness, but resonance. A hum we cannot hear, yet feel. Time has tried to erase them. Earthquakes toppled walls, floods buried valleys, winds stripped temples bare. Civilizations rose, built upon their foundations and fell into dust. Yet the stones remained, indifferent to conquest, indifferent to time. They are not ours. They never were. They belong to the mystery itself. We return then to the question that began our journey. What if ancient stonework was alien tech? If so, then our story is not one of isolated human brilliance, but of contact, guidance, perhaps even partnership. If not, then the mystery is no less profound, for it reveals that we are heirs to a human past so extraordinary it borders on the impossible. Either way, the stones win. They preserve the enigma, and perhaps that is the point. Perhaps the purpose was never to explain, but to endure. To stand as markers, not only of stone, but of possibility. To remind us that history is not complete, that knowledge is never finished, that mystery itself is sacred. Look again at the walls of Cusco, where no blade of grass fits. At Baalbek, where 1,000-ton stones rest like feathers. At Giza, where the pyramid points to Orion with uncanny precision. These are not accidents. They are questions carved into the earth, awaiting answers we may never hold. So let the stones speak without words. Let their silence echo louder than explanation. Let their presence remind us of what we do not know, and of how much there still is to discover. Where are you listening from tonight, and at what time? The ruins endure. The myths whisper. The stars remain. The loop closes, but the mystery opens again, waiting for us in every block of stone that has outlived its builders.